Greetings, everyone. Thank you, Gonzalo, for those fascinating two panels that you moderated. It has given us very significant insights into what we can do in different spheres of action. Thank you, Gonzalo, moving forward in the next decade. Two panels. Now, we are on to this panel for an inclusive multilateralism and radical collaboration to implement the Paris Agreement, because nothing less will do. Moving forward, we have three amazing panelists: Alan Jope, Chief Executive Officer of Unilever; Valentina MINTAH, founder of West Blue Consulting; and Mark CRANDALL, founder and director of CWP Renewables. The 2020s have been dubbed the decade of action for accelerating sustainable solutions to all the world's biggest challenges, ranging from poverty and gender to climate change, inequality, and of course, closing the finance gap. This will require not only bold targets, but unprecedented collaboration by non-state actors and governments to drive implementation. And who better than the three panelists we have today to give us some very meaningful insights. Unilever is part of the Business Ambition for 1.5 campaign, has science-based targets for a 1.5-degree trajectory, and has signed the United Business and Governments to Recover Better statement. They're also part of Caring for Climate, Carbon Pricing Leadership Criteria, Responsible Climate Policy Engagement, and I could go on and on. Ms. MINTAH is on the executive board of the International Chamber of Commerce, and she will provide the SME perspective. As we know, there are 350 million SMEs around the world, and while the conversation has centered around the global majors like Unilever and others, but it is also important to engage the SMEs, because in many countries around the world, they could be 98% of the carbon footprint. And Mark CRANDALL of CWP Renewables. CWP is a founding partner of the world's biggest green hydrogen project, Green Hydrogen Catapult, and he will be offering us amazing insights as we proceed with the discussions today. Let me start by asking all of you, I mean, it's great to have you with us, and we're talking about an inclusive multilateralism. How can we bring everybody together, creating the coalition of the virtuous to improve world governance? We need to draw on civil society, cities, businesses, local authorities, and more on young people. So let me ask each one of you the same question. Why is it crucial to bring everyone into this global conversation on the climate crisis? Let me start by inviting Valentina.
Thank you, SATIA, and good day to our audience. If there's one thing that the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us, it is that we're only as strong as our weakest link. And similar to climate change, the effects are non-discriminatory. Inclusion and collaboration are therefore no longer nice to have, but critical action items that must take effect in our 2020s decade of action, as we've named it. Now, I'm sure many of us are also aware that without concerted action from all stakeholders, in 10 years, climate change's devastating effects and our relationship with the natural world would have fundamentally changed life as we know it. You mentioned young people. Children and young people face the worst effects of the damage we will cause on their future. The impacts of climate change are already being felt. The intensity and frequency of severe weather events are leading to drought, failing crops, water shortages, and forced migration, not to mention the destruction of infrastructure and the economic ramifications that this brings. Also, more than half of the world's total GDP is already moderately or highly exposed to risks from nature's losses. At the International Chamber of Commerce, ICC, as the institutional representative of over 45 million businesses worldwide, and also the voice of the real economy, we believe that it's time to open our eyes to the value of taking action on climate and biodiversity loss. Now, we're often presented with the view that business simply can and should do more. But the reality is that a business's ability to scale environmental efforts isn't just limited by the will of its leadership, but the collective efforts of all actors in the ecosystem. That's why as we approach the 5-year anniversary of the Paris Agreement at ICC, we see a need for genuine systems change involving all actors, small and large, to provide a basis for a resilient rebuild from COVID-19 and achievement of the goals of the Paris Agreement and also the SDGs more broadly. From private sector perspective, the supply chain leaders need to ensure that their shifts to sustainable procurement are not predicated on threats, and that these actions are coupled with support, guidance, and tools that are accessible throughout their value chains. Now, looking at governments. Governments need to develop provisions to create accelerated pathways for systems transformation while creating regulatory environments which reward and enable long-term investments in resilience and sustainability. So certainly the role of radical collaboration and cooperation of everyone, government and private sector, citizens, young and old, in this effort cannot be overstated. And therefore, the need for collaboration, collaboration, collaboration cannot be overstated, Satya.
Thank you, Valentina. Alan?
Thank you very much, Satya. And let me build on a couple of points that Valentina has made. First of all, capitalism has done a wonderful job in many regards. It's still an excellent system for allocation of resources. Capitalism has lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. It's been a spur to competition and innovation. It is the mechanism by which we reward risk. But there are two huge problems in the world, which is climate change and deepening inequality in many parts of the system. And we're now at a point where capitalism is contributing to those problems. And we need to turn the tables and have capitalism be part of the solution. And so the new model of capitalism that's emerging is one that has several characteristics, but the kind of opening one is an adoption of this so-called multi-stakeholder model. And at Unilever, we truly believe that when we take care of our employees and let them take care of our customers, when we treat our business partners with respect, when we do good by the societies where we operate and take care of the planet, as a consequence, our shareholders will be preferentially rewarded. And that multi-stakeholder model of capitalism has got collaboration built into it. And so if we want to avoid a world where we've got runaway climate change and rampant inequality, it begins with a model of business that acknowledges the role for all different stakeholders collaborating to solve these big problems in an economically viable way.
Thank you, Alan, for highlighting that stakeholder value unlocks true value for the shareholders as well. Mark?
Alan, that was a great speech. I couldn't agree with you more. So I want to just add one thing sort of in defense of capitalism. I think capitalism is really good at getting things done, but capitalists tend to be sort of ruthless about only doing what's best for them. So part of the multilateral approach that we need to achieve here is to make sure that we're not asking people to fall on their own swords. If we have common rules, a new common playing field, we can achieve enormous things. But to do that, we can't have free riders. So if we say to people, listen, it would be better not to emit carbon, then we need to make it true for everybody so that one person can't emit carbon and the other one not. Once you make the rules the same, the system will adjust, I think, much more quickly than people even hope or expect. It can happen really radically quickly, but it requires rule changes.
Thank you, Mark. We really need to move from a model of private profits and public losses to a model where everybody stands to gain from a collaborative partnership. Now I have a question for Alan. Unilever is one of the largest multinational companies working with thousands of suppliers in the supply chain and its value chain. Tell us a little about how you are collaborating with companies in your value chain to advance sustainability, and then not just the ones in your specific value chain, but others as well, your partners, your competitors, how to enthuse them into action. Thank you, Alan.
Sure. Well, look, let me give a very simple example from our value chain, which is we believe that sustainable agricultural practices are no longer enough. We've introduced a regenerative agriculture code where we will now work with tens of thousands of smallholders who supply our key commodities and help them switch to regenerative practices in our own self-interest. We believe it will be a more efficient model of agriculture. So that's a straightforward example of value chain partnership. Let me come on to another example, which is technology partners. I'll give you two examples. We are absolutely focused on making sure that there's no deforestation associated with our supply chain. And that's where technology comes in. We're partnering with advanced geomapping, an AI and machine learning company, and can you believe it, simple cell phone tracking technology to be able to map the truck drivers who are bringing commodities to the mills that we use and make sure that there is no deforestation happening there. And then I'll finish with an example that builds on what Mark was saying, which is we strongly believe on a price on carbon, but that price on carbon is most effective when it's matched with high quality carbon labeling. We see a day not too far away when every Unilever product, in the same way as we put calorie labels on foods, we'll put carbon loads on all of our products. And when you match that ability to give people the ability to make choice and have a price on carbon, then I think we've got a chance for the system to change as quickly as Mark was indicating it could. But it's incredibly difficult to do that. So we can't do it on our own. We need to work with, we're working with Microsoft, but also industry groups, our competitors, our peers, so that we can standardize, capture, and report the carbon loads in our products. And then when we get the market really working through consumer choice and a price on carbon, then I think we give the planet a chance.
Thank you, Alan. That's what true leaders do. And thank you for your leadership. Now, Valentina, you're the founder of the SME West Blue Consulting. We've heard about the value chain of major corporates, but what is the contribution of smaller companies and how can we help them tackle the climate crisis much more effectively? Tell us a little bit more from your perspective.
Okay. Thanks, Satya. We heard from JOPE about Unilever, but we almost know that SMEs are an integral part of supply chains and serve as major engines of innovation, value creation, employing different labor force segments, as well as providing skill development opportunities. Also, you mentioned earlier, SMEs make up about 90% of business worldwide and represent up to 60% of the employed population. The contribution of SMEs should therefore be at the core of solutions tackling the climate crisis. These solutions include policies to reduce the impact on the environment, example, recycling, adopting energy efficient systems, and paperless processes, to name a few. SMEs also play a critical role in creating awareness and disseminating information to their communities and also the communities they serve. So there's a lot of ongoing effort as we speak in this direction from SMEs. And there are now more than double the number of real economy actors that are committed to net zero targets than at this time last year. I applaud the efforts of the UN Race to Zero team in creating this momentum. We must keep going. Also, last year, ahead of the UN Secretary General's Climate Action Summit, a grassroots movement of more than 2,100 Chamber of Commerce representatives, making up more than 10 million local business leaders, united to form the ICC Chambers of Climate Coalition, and committed also to supporting the goal of achieving net zero emissions by 2050 at the latest. Now, with already strained financial resources, a dearth of technical know-how, and lack of access to interventions, the contribution of SMEs must be supported by supply chain leaders, institutions, and government to assure the holistic and rapid gains desired. So we look forward to seeing more of the collaboration points as illustrated by Mark earlier. This past September, ICC, working with the Exponential Roadmap, We Mean Business, and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, launched the SME Climate Hub. Now, our aim with the hub is to provide a global one-stop shop of tools and support for SMEs to allow hard-pressed SMEs to be more competitive today while enhancing their resilience for years to come. And we really encourage everyone to find out more about the SME Climate Hub via our dedicated website, which is smeclimatehub.org, and to join this collective effort to build a holistic system capable of enabling SMEs to also build back better. Now, I'm personally equally delighted to announce that my company, West Blue Consulting, committed to climate-conscious practices such as the paperless solutions for governments, has today made the formal SME climate commitment and is joining and putting all its efforts, support behind this initiative, joining governments, businesses, cities, regions, and universities around the world that share the same mission. I am very confident that the tools and resources that this platform will provide will help companies make good on their climate commitment. So I implore all companies to log on to the SME Climate Hub and to join us in this initiative so that we can collaborate to co-create solutions to solve the climate crisis. Thanks, Satya.
Thank you, Valentina. Now on to Mark. Mark, as you know, in the last few weeks, we've seen some tremendous progress in terms of commitments from countries to get to net zero. China announced that they will get to net zero by 2060. Then Japan, European Union, South Korea, 2050. Sweden has announced earlier that they'll get to net zero by 2045. And we all understand that energy transition will be at the heart of that possibility of between the bridge between the promises and action. And you've been a pioneer of renewable technology projects, and you clearly understand the power of innovative technologies in enabling us to accelerate the race to zero emissions. And how significant will be the role of technology, especially green hydrogen, in our efforts to achieve net zero by 2050?
Well, we can't ask everybody to just suddenly fork over their entire income to make the world a slightly better place. We need a competitive solution to keeping our cars on the road, to keeping our homes heated and all the rest of this. We've lived culturally for the last 100 years or so since we invented or discovered petroleum off the narcotic of really cheap energy, which is, has done wonders for the world's wealth. We were also accidentally shooting ourselves in the foot without necessarily realizing it while we were doing it, all right? Now, suddenly we've all woken up, like, the kid who waited till the night before his exam to study, and we've got to move very quickly. Now, we still need cars. We still need warm houses. We still need air conditioning. We still need food, which is an enormous consumer of energy. So we need to find an energy replacement solution that works, all right? Now, electricity produced by renewable resources is the obvious one, and that will take care of a very large part of the problem. We're all going to discover 20 years from now that many more things are driven by electricity than are driven today. But it can't be all of the solution because electricity can't do everything. For example, we can't use electricity to make nitrogen fertilizers, right, which we need, or else we can't eat. We cannot use electricity to make steel. We need something to reduce iron oxide to make steel. This is where we need some newfangled solutions. And the obvious newfangled solution is hydrogen. So 7 companies today have been assembled, let's say, by the climate change leadership. And the 7 of us have decided to launch what we're calling the hydrogen catapult, which I love the metaphor. We've got to put on our helmet and our dark glasses, and someone's going to shoot us into the sky. The objective is to implement within the next 5 years 25 gigawatts of hydrogen electrolysis. So what's the deal with hydrogen? Every bit of energy we consume today, we burn something. The stuff that we burn has carbon in it. The byproduct emission is CO2, which is causing climate change. The only alternative is to use renewable solutions to create something that you can combust from water. And this is green hydrogen. So if you shoot enough electricity, which we can make with a wind farm or a solar farm or a hydroelectric plant, into water, you can get the water, H2O, to divide. And once you have the green hydrogen, you have something that you can use in all sorts of interesting ways. You can move it, you can burn it, you can make steel with it. It will fill in all the gaps where electricity by itself won't do the job. So who's doing this? There's 7 of us in this catapult together. Aqua Power, which is about to build probably the very first really large scale hydrogen plant in Saudi. My company, obviously, CWP, Envision, which is a wind company, Iberdrola, Ørsted, which is very famous for the stuff that they've done offshore, Yara, which, as far as I'm aware, is the world's largest fertilizer company, and SNAM, which is the Italian grid operator. And together, the 7 of us are each going to try and do something really big. Our little piece of the puzzle is a project in Australia, which, when we get it finally built some years from now, will be the largest single energy project in the world, we think. And it's going to make green hydrogen, and it's going to make green fertilizer. So together, I think the UN has helped us set the bar very high, and these 7 private companies together are all up on the roof of the building, and we're going to jump. What we need is for the rest of the world to kind of raise something to catch us as we jump off the building. We need to see that carbon has a price and that people are motivated to use green hydrogen. We're going to take the price down from where it is today to under $2, which means we're going to basically make it competitive within 5 years with petroleum. We need a little help from the rest of the world to make sure that once we get that price down to that level, everyone is sort of induced to do it. And if we do that, we can make a revolutionary change in the energy market within 5 years.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. I'm sure we will have enough of a threshold number of critical actors that are listening today and around the world ready to support you in your catalytic initiative. Now, talking about collaboration and partnerships, Alan, Unilever has a long history of collaboration with the UN, but speaking more broadly, how can the private sector strengthen inclusive multilateralism? You spoke a little bit about it in your opening remarks. Could you reflect on the learnings from your collaborations?
Yeah, first of all, I noticed, Satya, that my image has gone a little blurry, and I think it's tears of joy from hearing Mark talk some common sense about hydrogen. Mark, we're converting one of our big industrial facilities in the northwest of England to see if we can run an industrial plant on hydrogen. I think that's a lot more sensible approach than trying to shove it through domestic pipes. Anyway, great to hear what you're up to. To answer your question, Satya, everything that we achieve of note on our purpose-led brands is done in partnership. The reason why Dove is able to reach 50 million girls with body self-esteem images is through partnership with organizations like the Girl Guides and UNICEF. The reason why Domestos can put tens of millions of toilets into homes in the emerging world to end the degradation of open defecation is because we work on partnerships on the ground and with government and non-governmental organizations. Our efforts to tackle food waste, our efforts to change the food system, not one of these can we manage to do on our own. And all we need to do is find organizations that have got a similar goal, a similar purpose, similar values. And when you work collaboratively with other organizations, great things can happen. If you try to do everything within your own shell, you limit the potential impact, I would say, for your business results, as well as positive impact in the world.
Thank you, Alan. I must say my eyes are tearing up now because I really believe in the power of partnerships. I have myself worked on building catalytic partnerships with millions of farmers. You talked about regenerative agriculture. That is something I did before coming onto this role with the United Nations. So thank you so much, all three of you, for your leadership and insights today. Before we go, just in about 10-15 seconds each, tell us in one sentence what you would want the audience today to take away from this session when it comes to radical collaboration. Very briefly, let's start with Valentina.
I think I'll end by saying that in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're being forced to review several existing business and even government models that we took for granted. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we must all take opportunity to co-create sustainable solutions for climate actions. So all hands on deck.
Thank you, Valentina. Mark?
Well, I've been very excited, obviously, the last couple of months with the initiatives we've seen out of Chile and Asia on commitments to net zero by 2050, and in Chile in particular with commitments to hydrogen. But it's going to take the whole world. You simply can't do this unless you create a rules-based system, and rules-based systems demand everyone to agree in advance what the rules should be, and then once those rules are there, to make sure they happen. It's got to be multilateral. It's got to be organizations like the UN, organizations like the International Marine Organization, which together create rules that everyone can live with. And if we have those, then it'll work.
Thank you. Alan, the last word.
Super quickly, none of us can solve the really big issues alone. Only through radical collaboration will we get to this sustainable, equitable growth that the world needs.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Valentina. Thank you, Mark, for the insightful conversation. It is now my privilege to introduce Ms. Patricia Espinosa, Executive Secretary of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, who will share with us closing remarks and a way forward.